Good evening, SCPA family, and welcome to this evening's Salon in our brand new Salon series. We are so excited about our guest this evening, and we're excited that you are all out there this evening. I want to spend just a moment here to send a few shout outs. I want to send some shout outs out there to everybody that I can see that is already in this evening's chat. I want to say a big hello to Miss Roxanne Carrasco. Miss Roxanne, thank you so much for connecting us with tonight's guest. This is just, one of the many positives that come out of being a member of the SCPA community. You've got practicing artists who are connected to some of the best people in the world at what they do. And right now, during this moment of distance, we've been able to create an opportunity that brings these folks home to you guys. And so we're absolutely thrilled to have this. And this could not be done without the Friends of SCPA. So a huge shout out to our parent foundation, the Friends of SCPA, for underwriting the Salon series for us. Tonight's guest, we are so excited to have. She's prodigy, comes from a very, very famous family. But this woman has created her own historical contribution to the world of the cinematic arts. And she brings a tremendous amount of information, inspiration, and hope to a lot of our young people this evening. She is the amazing producer and props master on any film set, Miss Catherine Scorsese. Catherine, welcome to our program this evening.
Hi, Richard. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I'm very happy to be here tonight.
We are so thrilled to have you here. I know that when we were talking in ideation, you got a lot of us very, very excited about the kinds of things that our students are just absolutely teeming with to hear about. They want to know, hey, is this journey in the arts, can it be real for me? And
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
the way I'd like to start is just by you sharing with us a little bit about your journey. What was specific, about Kathy's journey?
Sure, absolutely. I think that for me, ironically, I really wanted to be a vet. I love animals, and you'll see. I think you can see a few of my pets in the background now. They'll make appearances, I'm sure, during the evening. But I didn't have the grades for it. I also didn't really have the stomach for it either. So it became apparent pretty early on that was in the cards for me. And I grew up on film sets, so it was really second nature to me. I just wasn't quite sure where I fit in. So I did go to film school thinking that was, the best route to take. And I was still lost. And I think back then it was a lot different than it is now, even though there was, NYU had a fabulous film school. My father came out of that film school. A lot of great, directors have come out of that, and actors and writers and all kinds of people come out of it, Tish. But I was still sort of floundering and not quite sure where I wanted to go. And, being the child of someone famous, you do live in sort of a shadow. So I really had to navigate my own way, and I was very shy growing up. So finding props really changed my entire world. Right out of college, I worked for, it just happened I went to like a college, like a job fair seminar, and they were looking for an assistant to one of the producers at Children's Television Workshop. And I happened to get that job. And the producer was the coordinating producer of Sesame Street, and she coordinated all the short films and animations for them. So I got to, basically she would hand me stacks of VHS tapes and go, here, go watch these and tell me what you think. And if there's any good ones, bring them back and say, give me a few to watch, and she would, do things like that. And so that's how that, so I started in loving children's programming from that experience. And I was there for a while. And I really, really, really enjoyed it. At the time, I actually watched a short animation from about a little desk lamp from a very tiny little company at the time that no one knew about, called Pixar. And I told my boss, I said, you have to see this. You have to see this, animation. It's fantastic. So, thinking back now, that's super exciting, and that, these guys at Pixar sent us their little tape saying, hey, you guys want to show this on Sesame Street? We think we'd be good, a good fit for you. So it wasn't until later that I started working I worked as a production assistant in film, and then props I sort of fell into by accident. But it did make sense. It clicked for me. It was something that really clicked for me. Yeah, go ahead.
You've illuminated a couple of different things here that I think are important for our students to hear. One of them is, even after Tisch, you weren't sure. And yet you shared with us a story that I want you to share with our audience right now. Because, and I don't want to reveal the end until the end. And that is, that is, you shared with us a story about being on set, being asked a question when you were little. And we'll talk about how little you were, but I want you to just share that story with folks.
Okay. Yeah. So I used to go to visit my dad on set, and I believe it was Easter break. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was like spring, Easter break. And he was making Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. And I was about 8, 9, something like that. So it was 70. Yeah, it was about 73, I think. So I would have been 8. And they were doing a birthday party scene for the little boy in the movie, and it looked like crap. And I was like talking to, people on set, and I'm going, no, it doesn't really. And they're like, well, what would it look like? You're an 8-year-old kid, and he was a little bit older than I was. And I was like, well, that's not what I would do. I was like, I wouldn't want my birthday party to look like. Well, what would you do? And they're like, come help us, show us. So that was fun for me to get to, help them, decorate the set and show them as a little kid, because you've got a bunch of, old guys decorating a little kid's birthday party, and they don't know. So they asked me for help, and, that was one of the first things that I got to do. And so that was really sort of exciting. Yeah. So I grew up on film sets, so I was very comfortable on them.
So an 8-year-old walks onto set and says, this doesn't look good, we're going to fix it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it.
I usually, my father is he's very particular on set, but I usually, around him, I have no problem speaking my mind, especially when it comes to work. I don't have a problem speaking my mind on set, because I'm pretty confident on set. So
that's amazing.
Privately, we have communication issues privately, but on set, I'm pretty open about, we have a good working relationship when we work together, which is fun. What was fun.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful and vulnerable. Yeah. And I appreciate that. So I want to ask you, at 8 years old, you walk on a set of one of the most iconic films ever. And you're telling everybody what to do for this birthday party. And then yet you go to Tisch, probably, arguably one of the most prestigious film schools in the country. And yet Cathy Scorsese isn't really sure about this business. When did you know, Cathy, that this was your calling?
I really got excited at Children's Television Workshop. That was probably really the beginning. But I joined Children's Television Workshop, and about 3 or 4 months, within the first 6 months of me being there, Jim Henson passed away. Wow. And it changed drastically there. And unfortunately, being one of the last hired, I was one of the first expired. There was a big shakeup, and it was just, and it was very sad. It was very sad for all of us, but there was just big, it was just, there was a lot that was changing at the time. So I was out of work, and I ended up going to work as a production assistant. I just became a PA on some shows. One of my father's friends, Aaron Winkler, heard I was out of work, and he said, "Send her down, and we'll put her to work as a PA." So that sort of started my production assistant career. And from there, I was working, and at the time, my father really didn't want me working on his shows. He was like, "No, she has to do this on her own." And his assistant director said, "But she's good. She's a good production assistant, and we want to keep her." So, and the actors like her. So, don't discourage it. It's not, has nothing to do with you, Marty. It has to do with her. We want to keep her. So, which was nice for me to hear at the time. And we were working on Age of Innocence, and I happened to be doing a lockup, and the prop master was working with a prop at the time. And he saw me standing there, and I guess I must have been sort of looking intently and maybe smirking. And he was like, "What? You think you could do it better?" And I was like, "No, I don't, I'm just a PA. I'm here to watch this stuff, And the prop master said, "Come here." He said, "Help me. How would you do this?" And so I helped him wrap this sort of very intricate box that needed to be wrapped in such a way so it could be hinged and opened and closed. And that for me was the first spark of, I want to do this. And I pursued that poor prop master until he hired me. It took about 8 or 9 months to wear him down. And then he hired me.
Wow. So regardless of the prodigy and the connection, you're somebody who really did earn your way all the way through the business. And then you found this thing called props. And I think one of the things that we talked about in our earlier discussions was there's really no such thing as a role that's not important on a film set. And so you really laid that home with us when we were listening to you talk about what does props do and how is props connected. Right. Can you share with that complexity to our students?
Sure. I think that one of the most valuable things for me was having the production assistant training that I had. And at the time when I was working as a production assistant, I had several assistant directors say to me, "You'd make a really good assistant director. Why don't you become an AD?" And I really did not want to be an AD. I felt that wasn't where my passion was. It was too much paperwork, and it was too much regimented. It just wasn't my jam. It wasn't my thing. I knew there was something else out there for me. I knew there was something else I wanted to do. And then when I found props, that was it. And I was, set, and I knew that was what I was going to do. And it was one of the first times I really sort of had the blinders on and just went for it. And really it took about, I think it was 1.5 years from the time I decided I wanted to be a prop till the time I got into the union. It took me about 1.5 years. And with little to no help from, my father or my last name or whatever. I really had to do it on my own. But so being a production assistant really helped give me a really good idea of what everyone on the set did, because everybody's job is interconnected. The props department has to know, at all times what, the rest of the art department is doing, what the greens department is doing, what camera's doing, we all work together. There is not any one department that you're always going to, especially in props. There's so many places where we overlap with other departments. And so it's always good to know what the other departments do. And we especially have to deal with every other department. Having other film training just in general was great. And just knowing from being on set what everybody else sort of did was great.
So you
because
get to a film set and you're the props person.
mhm.
How does the props person interact with script, direction, set? How does that work?
Well, so the script supervisor, for example, script supervisor is in charge of continuity for the most part, except the props department is also in charge of continuity. So the script supervisor like times out the script and sits next to the director, and the script supervisor makes sure that they've got all of the the shots that they need, and that they've enough coverage for a particular scene. Um, and that it will cut together. But by the same token, so on set, every single take, a representative from the prop department has to be there to reset the props. And usually you do not shoot things in chronological order. So you have to pay attention to how things were shot, because you have to make sure that you are, that you reset things to the way they're supposed to be, or advance them or pull them back to where they are in relation to where you are in that particular scene. So you have to know a little bit about continuity, and you're going to end up working very closely with the script supervisor. You want to be friends with the script supervisor, because when you go, wow, where was that glass? Oh God, what, where was the position of this? How was that? You can go to the script supervisor and be like, hi, can you help? Where was this? I can't remember, so so that's one example of how we interact with the script supervisor. But we are also responsible for continuity of the props. In terms of set dressing, the set dressers and the props department are sort of interchangeable. We work very closely with the set dressers, and the set dressers are more responsible for furniture, drapes, things like that, lamps. But we have certain requirements. They have certain requirements. For example, say there's a scene where we need the drapes to be able to open. Well, what if they've put up false drapes that don't open? We need to tell that we're going to need keys for a door lock, because they want, the actor wants keys. He wants to really be able to open that door lock. I have to be able to, have, the forethought to go, I need to go to the set dressers and make sure. And the set dressers may say, well, we don't have it. Can you go pick up a lock and, we'll install it, or someone else will install it. But so things like that. So every single department, you've got to, figure out who's responsible. And it's different, ironically, on every project. It can be different. There's nuances. It can be different on every project. So it's interesting. You've got to be organized, and you've got to, as I said, know a little bit about. You don't have to know everything. A little bit about what every department does.
Wow. So nothing is simple on a film set. That's basically what
No, and everybody from craft service to, locations to everybody plays a role. There's nobody that's insignificant, for sure. And if anything, COVID has proven that, and it's shown us just how important everybody is. It's been, because I think that sometimes producers tend to think that, like, that certain crew members are, not expendable, but not as important as, say, the camera department or the hair and makeup department or the production designer. And it's just not true.
My gosh. I mean, just illuminating all of the different roles that are on any given film set. Sometimes they can be reduced and they can be a little bit more skeletal. And then sometimes on a major blockbuster, you've just got every single role that you could possibly need, and then some.
For sure. And there's lots of overlap. Films today are a lot different than the way films were made, say 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago. The roles have definitely changed, and they are evolving rapidly. So it's pretty interesting.
So we've got
really interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
We've got a question that just came up,
Yeah,
and I want to pepper these in as we're going through our interview,
absolutely.
because after this question, I want to switch to a whole another part of filmmaking that you really became synonymous with. That is pretty awesome,
Okay.
and we're approaching the holiday season, so it
Yep.
might be something that everybody wants to talk a little bit about or hear a little bit
Okay.
about. But first off, the question is, what is the coolest prop that you ever had to make?
Oh, what is the coolest prop that I ever had to make? Wow. Hmm. God, that's a tough one. And I knew I should have thought about this ahead of time, but there's so many. Like, what is the coolest prop I've ever had to make? God, there's a lot. I'm trying to think. I think that, um, on period jobs, there's been a lot of stuff that we've had to do. I did Boardwalk Empire, which is obviously a period piece. I've done a lot of period pieces. Fabulous, because I love them. A lot of I would have to say probably some of the rubber props have been the coolest. We've made a lot of stuff in rubber for stunts and things like that, to use for fight scenes. So that's those are pretty cool and fun. So we've made all kinds of things. I mean, we've made car parts, we've made bricks and frying pans and and all kinds of craziness. Golf clubs. Um, I'm trying to think of what is the coolest though. I know some of the most annoying ones I've ever had to make.
Maybe we start
One
there.
of the most challenging ones actually was fairly recently. I worked on a show called Godfather of Harlem, and the director wanted a doll, a very, very specific doll, an African American doll. And she was one of the first that came out that was really high end in the 1960s. And there weren't that many of them made. And this doll did not exist. There were, I mean, anywhere, no collectors, nowhere. I mean, it just did not exist. And I really asked my boss, I said, let me have this doll made. And he did not want to have it made. So I ended up having to put this doll together from modern day dolls, meaning buying dolls, cutting their hair, putting wigs on them, having clothes made. I mean, everything. Like I had to have like socks made, shoes made, had the makeup department help me put makeup on the doll. And then I had to have the art department make a box. We had to make a box for the doll, the replica box for the doll. It was one of the most labor intensive, but it ended up being very, very cool. So that was a pretty cool one. But it was, I didn't sleep for about 2.5 weeks on that project because they kept moving up the deadline. So, but it was very cool. Um, yeah, things like that. That was one of the coolest.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was
So
pretty cool.
if another one comes up during the course of this, because oftentimes when I'm in an interview, I can be asked a question, I've got a better answer later. Not that this answer wasn't great, but if something comes up, don't be afraid to come back around to this
Okay.
question. I want to
Yeah.
leave that open because you have such a wealth of experience that it'd be interesting to hear other ideas. I can't imagine putting something iconic together over a period of time that you don't actually have access to. You've got to build it from the ground up. That's pretty remarkable.
Well, there's a lot of stuff like that now. I've noticed recently that a lot of stuff is disappearing. Which is unfortunate. A lot of stuff has disappeared because a lot of studios don't hold on to stuff. So a lot of film studios have snapped up a lot of stuff that has been on eBay and Etsy and from private collectors, and they store them. They wait till the film comes out, and they've been storing them in containers, and then they trash everything. So there's not a lot of people making period 1960s, rotary phones. There's a lot, there's a lot of things that, we do have to make now from the ground up, because they just don't exist anymore.
That's remarkable. That's
Yeah.
absolutely remarkable.
I mean, I've noticed on eBay, especially that, where eBay, you'd go and you'd put in, I don't know, 1960s stereos and radios, and you'd have 30,000 entries. And now you're lucky if you get, a few hundred.
Wow. So you really are, and then the cost of probably getting something like that becomes exorbitant, and so you probably are looking.
Making it, the cost is the cost to make it is just it's not very cost effective to make it, but the things don't exist anymore. They just don't exist.
Wow.
So they have to be made. That's why I think the way of the film business is going more towards CGI. That a lot of things are going to become CGI because the things just don't exist anymore.
That's amazing, and I want to talk a little bit more about CGI in a moment here. So, Kathy, you get into producing. Producing is huge. That's massive.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit? How did you land there, and then what can you share about that with us?
I have a passion for antique toys and antique children's books. And I always wanted to make a Christmas special. And I had a producing partner at the time, and we were looking for something to do. And we sort of both, had been looking at various children's books. We had optioned a children's book, and it didn't pan out. And then he came to me and he said, "Hey, have you heard of this thing called Elf on the Shelf?" And this was before Elf on the Shelf became what it is today. Well before that. We're going back now, like, wow, almost 12 years ago, I think now.
Wow.
And I said, no. So we approached them. And we said, "Hey, we would love to turn this into an animated special." And they did not want to give up property, but said they would love to team up with us. And it just was one of those things where everything fell into place and the stars aligned, and we made the special. And and we have a Christmas classic, which is great.
What all goes into, you've got it greenlit,
right?
You've got it financed.
Well, they self-financed it, so we didn't really have any. We didn't have it, and they self-financed and self-distributed it. So really, it was it really was an independent project. So we didn't have anybody to answer to. Yeah, they self-financed it. The women who owned the actual intellectual property, so they self-financed it. And then we just from there, pitched it to the networks, and it was a little bit slow in the beginning, and CBS picked it up, and they were sort of like, they were a little wishy-washy about it. And our home eventually at TBS and TNT and Cartoon Network. And then obviously the DVD and iTunes. And so, then it picked up momentum, but, yeah.
So, Kathy, going into it as Elf on the Shelf, probably knowing too that it's got an audience. You've got an audience that is just waiting for this to come out. How involved do you get in terms of casting, set design, score, all of the components that begin to craft and make this film?
On this particular project, we all were sort of, except for the financing part of it, we were all, equal partners. Obviously, the women who own the intellectual property, they had more of a stake in it financially because they put up the money. But in terms of casting, things like that, and the actual writing of the script and things like that. My producing partner, he's also a musician, so he was heavily involved in the music and the scoring. We all worked on the lyrics for the scores, for the various songs. our director, who is still a dear friend of mine to this day, and who he and I have a few projects that we've been working on. Chad, who directed it, he has a company called Trick 3D Animation, and did a fabulous job with, I mean, the amount of money he had to make that special, and what he actually did with the money was amazing, because, you know, we ended up, we did farm some of it out to a company in India to work on some of it, but he and one of the other producers like went to India and were there, and, you know, in the trenches. So I wasn't as heavily involved with that, but we all did make, you know, the decisions sort of, you know, together about that. But yeah, it was, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, and it came together fairly quickly, which was nice. So it was, it's been a great experience, and I'm looking forward to doing some other, you know, some other children's stuff too down the line.
I love the fact that you use the term fun. You know, I think anybody in the arts, the fun is the work is the fun.
Right.
And that's hard to understand sometimes, because we look at work as work and fun
Right.
as fun, not understanding that the two actually go hand in hand when you're passionate about something.
For sure. For
Hey,
sure.
we've got one of our young filmmakers who's actually new to SCPA, and I'm really excited that he's out there. Zay, thanks for your question, my friend. What are like the top things you do and or say to a producer company to get a script greenlit?
Whoa. Whew, that's tough. It depends, you know. Sometimes you have to knock on a lot of doors. So there isn't really any one thing in particular. I think that, you know, the business has changed so much. I think that, you know, the film business, like a lot of other businesses, is very political. I think that the most important thing is that you have to be passionate and you have to believe in your project. So if you have a script and you really, really are passionate about it and believe in it, like 350%, that is the best testament. That is probably the best thing that will put you over the finish line. Because you can beg and plead, and, you know, if a producer, and it may not be for that particular producer, you just have to find the right producer. So there's not any one particular thing that you need to say. I think you just need to be committed to the material, because somebody's going to know if you're not committed. I've had a lot of projects that people have wanted me to work on, that were just not for me, and they couldn't really necessarily get behind them, and they just weren't, you know, for me. And I think that if you're not passionate, they're going to pick up on that. So it really just, it's about, you know, being passionate. I'm not saying you have to be obnoxious about it, but just passionate and positive and staying positive, because you might have to knock on, you know, 500 doors, but it's 501, and that person's going to go, yeah, I really like this script, and I'm willing to get behind it. So unfortunately, this business is not easy, but it's very fulfilling, for sure. I was just talking to someone else about that today, how much it has changed, and how we wouldn't change our experience in it. We've loved how we've, you know, the time that we've been in it and spent in it, but it's changed a lot since we started out, for sure. And I think that, you know, you guys have an incredible opportunity that we didn't. I think now there are so many more opportunities open to you earlier than were open to us. And we had it was a lot more hit or miss for us. I mean, a lot more nepotism, you know, you had to know somebody to be able to really get in there and things like that. It's not so much who you know, it's what you know. And it's, you know, you're really judged on your own merits and your own talents. So just be passionate about it. You can't really be wishy-washy about something.
Yeah, and that brings us to another question, and that is, you've hit on a couple of points of how the business is changing. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what you see in terms of our currency and where the industry might be heading?
I think um, I think the change was happening before COVID. I think there has been a shift, and me personally, I don't know if it's necessarily for the better. Um, I've seen a lot of I don't know. I came up, I can only speak from my own experience. And when I came up in the film business, it was basically very much, eyes, ears open, mouth shut. I always used to joke that for the first 10 years I was in the business, I didn't sit down because that was my mentor. That's how you were taught, like we didn't have smartphones. So we were never looking at our phones. We did everything, believe it or not. We also didn't have the internet. When I first started propping, I used to use a desk telephone and a phone book to to research things.
Right.
We didn't have the internet. So, if I had to look up certain things, my head was in the phone book, and I would have phone books from like all over the country. Now obviously with the internet and everything else, there's the information is at your fingertips. So it's definitely things have just, definitely exploded. But I think that a lot of the respect for the craft has maybe sort of, gone away a little bit. I know that I found that a lot of people coming up think that they know how to do it better. And maybe they do. And, look, I learn new things every day, and that's great. But by the same token, there's also a formula that, there's definitely a formula for making movies, and it works. One thing that I was going to, touch on Thursday is that, there's a piece of paper called a call sheet, and that piece of paper basically has all the information, or it's a snapshot of all the information, any information that you could need for the day. And it's kind of like your Bible that you have to kind of carry around with you every day, to know what's going on for the day. So there's definitely a formula to movie making. But in terms of how it has changed, as I said, I think that with the advent of, the internet and, people didn't have a lot of respect for a lot of the antiques and the props and the things like that. They've gotten thrown away. They don't exist anymore. A lot of like stuff from the 1940s, 50s, 60s has been decimated, just doesn't exist anymore. So, and now with the advent of, CGI, they just, they want something, they just draw it in. Which is fabulous, but it's also, it's a little bit, it's definitely, controversial. It's controversial, I have mixed feelings about it. And as we know, another member of my family, for example, is like, I happen to be, as Roxanne knows, a huge Marvel fan. And another member of my family is not, and thinks that the Marvel movies are not cinema, which is up for debate. But I think that, for that everything needs to evolve. And if that's if that's the future of cinema, then that's the future of cinema. But that doesn't mean that there won't still be little independent movies, that there still won't be, groups of people running around with their camera, like, Blair Witch Project and making, little like, or, El Mariachi and people making, fabulous little films for no money. It's still going to happen.
My son is a burgeoning filmmaker, and so he has spent the last couple of years not collecting so much. I mean, adding to his arsenal, essentially, right?
Mhm.
What am I going to go out and shoot with? And the other day, bought an 8mm camera. So I want to ask you this:
Mhm.
are the days of cut? We've got to change the film. Check the gate. Are those days gone? Is
I hope
everything
not.
digitized?
Well, I think, I don't know. I thought my father was one of the last holdouts, and he finally went over to digital. But I know that there are a lot of people that still love film. It's just that it's getting much more expensive to shoot on film. I mean, with, the advent of digital, you can shoot, which a lot of filmmakers like, you can shoot a lot more, but I don't think, look, vinyl's coming back, I mean, so everything is sort of
Right.
cyclic, it all comes back again. I don't think that film will ever go completely away. My youngest sister is now at Tisch, and she's shooting, incredible photos on black and white film, again. And so I think that, I think everything is cyclic, and I don't think it'll ever go away completely. No, but the majority of people will definitely use digital just because it's cheaper, and it allows so many more people to get their message out there.
Right.
That's why it's also so appealing, is that anybody with a smartphone now, I mean, can make a movie.
Yeah, but I want to ask you about integrity, right? Because you were talking about respect for the craft of
The
filmmaking,
craft.
right? And so back to one. Back to one now has a different connotation because when you're working with an expensive piece of film, you're shooting on, 35mm
Yeah.
versus we're still rolling, and you're still rolling because you're on a digital camera.
Right.
Back to one has a completely different connotation.
Sure.
How does that transcend really to everyone that's on a set now too? I mean, it just feels like everything is faster than it once was.
Yeah, I think that, well, I don't know if it's faster necessarily. It's certainly, it makes for a lot of, it can make for a lot more hours. I'm not sure it's necessarily faster. It just means that they can shoot more.
Gotcha.
I'm not sure it's necessarily faster, because I've worked with some pretty incredible camera departments. So we're never waiting. It's very rare to be waiting on the camera department. I mean, the camera department has their routine down to a science. So,
Sure.
you're never waiting on camera. You're waiting on other things usually, unless there's, because they have multiple cameras for backup and, things like that. So you're never waiting on camera. The issue is that, with digital, I think you can shoot so much that, the director will go, well, let's try this, let's try that, let's try this, let's try, and then, you're shooting this one scene for 4 hours,
Right.
so, and in terms of the integrity, I think that when you shoot on film, you have to be much more precise, and you have to be much more prepared.
Right.
You have to go in knowing, you haven't done your homework. You have to have gone in going, okay, I know I need to get these are the shots that I want. These are the shots that I can live with if I can't get everything I want. You have to do your homework, and there also has to be, you have to have contingency plans. Thinking on your feet is a really good skill to have. You need to be able to roll with it. That's another, thing about the business is, you got to be able to kind of roll with it. You can't, when things go wrong, you can't just, stop and, go, what do I do? Because everything around you doesn't stop. It keeps going. It just keeps going.
Wow. You know what? I think that that description right there just kind of made me like completely feel being back on a film set. You're right. I mean, you feel it. There's just everyone is working so hard at
Yeah.
trying to get what needs to be done within whatever that schedule is for that particular day.
Yeah, and when you're trying to make that day, it's really when you know you've only so many hours of daylight and you've got to fit all of this stuff in, and you've got an actress that's in the hair and makeup chair and something's gone wrong, and you're going, and the time's going tick tock, you're like, whoa, and you've got people standing around, it's a big, joke is hurry up and wait.
Hurry up and wait. Kathy, so we're getting to the end here. I can't believe how fast this hour has gone.
Wow.
I wanted to ask you, you have so many amazing stories. Are there any stories that you can share with us, maybe one or two, where the story resonates so deeply with you? It's one that you go to because it had a significant impact on your career.
You mean in terms of things that have happened to me on set? You mean in terms of, is that what you mean?
Yeah, anything that maybe happened on set. Maybe it was a conversation between you and somebody. But
I think,
I
think I've had a lot of really great mentors. I've been really lucky. And there's a few pieces of advice, and I'll get into those more, I'll get into those more on Thursday, in the workshop. But, there are definitely a few things that have stuck with me very profoundly, over the years. And there was one prop master in particular. His name's Dennis Parrish, and he is a huge prop master in LA. And it's funny because there's a lot of differences from East Coast and West Coast prop masters, and I had never worked with a West Coast prop master before. And one piece of advice, he used to give me a lot of, he had a lot of pearls of wisdom when I first worked with him, and it was one of my first big shows right after I got into the union. I worked with him on, and he said to me one day, he said, "Kathy, if someone sends you out to get a chocolate cake and all you can find is an apple pie, you better come back with an apple pie." And at the time, I thought it was kind of, it sounds very funny, but what he's saying is, you have to be able to, if somebody sends you out for something and you can't get exactly that, you better come back with something and be able to sell that something to the producer, the director, the actor, whatever it is, you can't just go, well, I couldn't find anything, because I've been in that situation where they've sent me out to get something and I couldn't find it. So I had to come back with something, so that's one thing. Then there was my mentor, it was a man named Jim Mazzola, who was the person that really started my career. He was the prop master on Age of Innocence. And he was very smart and very giving, tough. He really sort of put me through my paces when I first started out. Didn't let me off the hook easy. I remember that my first couple jobs with him, his son was, I was working with his son, and, I had to, back then, we did wet downs, meaning, you rolled out fire hose, and, because obviously at night the street looks better when it's wet down. And so I'd have to, and now I don't know if anybody's had the experience of being on the end of a fire hose, but it is not easy. And after spending, a day and a night, on the other, on the end of a hose, and then also having to walk, roll up all the hose, because there's a special way you have to walk on it to get all the water out of it, and then carry all this hose. I remember I couldn't lift my arms for about a week because They were so sore. And I also had a terrible fear of heights. And so one of the first things that Jim Mazzola made me do was sit on the top of a 12-step ladder. And we were in a movie and it was supposed to be snowing. And he made me sit up there and straddle the ladder and shake this fake snow. And I was terrified. And he was like, "You afraid of heights anymore?" And I was like, "Nope." And he goes, "There you go."
Wow.
So but he taught me so many amazing lessons. And, one of them was also what he liked to call the rule of three, which was when dealing with props and usually a director, an actor, anybody, to pick you usually give them three choices: the one they're going to love, the one they're going to hate, and the one they're going to pick.
Right.
And I'll be damned if in the 30 years that I've been doing this, if it isn't the absolute truth, that if I know that I need a particular prop and I come with three, and I can tell you, like, for myself, like, I know which is the one they're going to love, the one they're going to hate, and pretty much predict the one they're going to pick.
So knowing a little bit about art, and probably, and I'm probably being naive here, knowing a lot about art is probably incredibly helpful when working in film.
Knowing about anything. I was no art aficionado, by any stretch of the imagination. It's funny, that you should say that, because one thing I was thinking about today was, when I was in college, for example, at NYU, I hated watching foreign films. Oh my God. I hated reading subtitles. I hated watching foreign films. And my father used to say to me, "Oh, but they're so beautiful in this." And I was like, snooze fest, boring, hated it, didn't get it, didn't want to get it. There were so many movies that were beautiful. Incredible movies. And I was like, not interested at all. And, in terms of art, I loved, I wasn't a huge art person. I love Disney art. I collect Disney art. I have a lot of Disney art. And I said to my mother, I was like, am I weird because I collect, this? She said, "No, this is what appeals to you. This is your sensibility. And she said, "And as you get older, your tastes will change and they will mature." And she was right, of course. But yes, I think I do know a lot about, for example, yes, in school that, I was never a stellar student, but like I loved history. I was good at history. I loved history, and it has served me well. But I think that everybody on a film set brings their knowledge, like brings different knowledge, especially, if you're working in the art department, that you bring from other things, be it painting, be it art history, be it decorating, be it drawing, be it ceramics, be it whatever your medium is. Any of that experience is helpful, because film is a visual medium. So anything that's visual is going to help you, for sure.
So go with me for a moment here, because we're about to wind up our interview. If anybody has any questions, now is a perfect time to pop them into the chat. But I'm going to ask Kathy one last question, and that is, Kathy, you're 17. You see your 17-year-old self sitting right next to you. What do you say to that 17-year-old today in terms of life, a pursuit in the arts? What do you say to that kid?
I say you don't have to have all the answers. You can relax a little bit about that. Don't be so uptight about that. And do broaden your horizons a little bit more. I wish I had been not necessarily, a straight A student, but I wished I had sort of taken it a little bit more seriously, and I wished I had branched out more and done more things and done more. My parents were always like, before college, were like, you need more extra, do more extracurricular activities, do more things. And I kind of was like, oh, it's kind of hokey. I wasn't sort of interested. And, they're like, now is the time to do it. And so I think I would have told myself, to not be worried about the future, but just do the things that you want to do that you love, and have fun with it. Most importantly, have fun with it. I think that's the biggest thing. If there's something you're passionate about and you love, that's what you should be doing. That's the most important thing. It's the one thing, we had touched on before, Richard, was when we had first spoken, was that, I'm working on this project called When Film Was Fun, because a lot of the fun and some of the joy had left. So I'm working on this book, because I think a lot of people feel that way, that, some of the joy has gone out of it. So don't be so hung up on the, correctness of it and the politics of it and those things. Enjoy it, have fun with it. That's the good stuff. One of my favorite directors is Taika Waititi.
Oh,
And
love him.
I had the opportunity to meet him recently.
Yeah.
And he's so joyful, and he loves what eats, breathes, sleeps, loves what he does. Could do other things, and maybe he will, but just is so happy and so joyful and loves it. Like, that's, everything right there. You need to love it. You just need to love it. And it sounds so damn hokey. And I think at 17, I would have been like, I wouldn't have listened to it, but you need to embrace it and love it and have fun. I wish my parents had encouraged me to have a little more fun with it, as opposed to it being such a serious thing. I was very worried, but I also had a big shadow to live in. So that was the other thing too. So I think I put more undue pressure on myself. So that there was that aspect to it. So I think I would have told myself to relax a little bit more and just have fun and do the things that made me happy, and not trying to please everybody else and do what everybody else thought I should be doing. And when I did do that, ultimately, which was props, I thrived. That's when I hit my stride, and I began to thrive and enjoy what I was doing, and made an entire career out of it.
Well, if you had been having a lot more fun when you were younger, there might have been a lot more set changes to a lot of the films that were made. Kathy Scorsese, I want to bring us to a close. What an incredible hour we've been able to spend with you. I feel absolutely blessed to have talked with you. I could talk with you all night. I'm sure that that's something in New York City, sitting in your beautiful apartment, that you probably do with a lot of your colleagues, but I could talk to you absolutely all night.
Well, I love talking with you guys. You guys are fabulous, and this is great. And I'm really looking forward to Thursday. And I was going to say, yeah, if there's anything that anybody, think of some stuff that you want me to talk about on Thursday, for sure. Think about questions, because I'm going to have some time to fill up on Thursday. And yeah, Richard, I really enjoy talking to you too. And Roxanne, if you're out there somewhere, thank you so much. Love you to pieces, my sister. And yeah, this was so much fun. And I can't wait till we can all travel again. I want to come visit. I want to come visit you guys and see you guys in person.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So when that happens, we're holding you to it.
Okay.
When that
Yeah,
happens,
absolutely.
you're coming out, you're going to do a residency with us. I mean, we just, when we have these kinds of resources and we have these kinds of connections, it's so valuable to us to get that information in the hands of our kids. And our kids, they're so amazing. They're so cool. So to every single student that's out there listening right now, you guys are awesome. You know you are. And what a joy and what a treat it is to be able to bring someone to you, at the level of Catherine Scorsese. So Zay just said, first of all, he wanted to thank you for answering that last question regarding the script pitch.
Yeah,
And
no
then
problem.
also wanted to say, yes, please come out here, please. So
Okay.
I
Yes,
think
as soon as we can travel, because I've got my sister and my brother-in-law and Roxanne and my nieces and my nephew, everybody's out there. We're dying to get out there. So I'm dying to come out there. And I definitely promise I will come and visit when we are able to travel. I'm dying to come out and see everybody and see you guys. So
Catherine
much
Scorsese,
fun.
that's so awesome. Listen, on the behalf of the San Diego School of Creative and Performing Arts and the Friends of SCPA, we want to thank you for being our guest this evening. Thank you all out there in the chat who were watching this evening. And students, get ready because you've got a treat coming to you on Thursday. Everybody, make sure that you tune in to our podcast again for next week. We've got another outstanding guest from Arizona State University coming to join us, Mr. Marcelino Quinones. But for Catherine Scorsese and myself, we wish you all a very wonderful night.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks for having me.